Hello, so I'm in the suburbs, and within a couple of days, I've sort of given up on appearances. I'm not even in my sweatpants phase, let's put it that way. Haven't even reached that level. But one of the things about being in the suburbs is the convenience. So you can order so many things online. You don't even have to leave the house. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I have so much more respect for housewives and house husbands, simply because I can't even be bothered shaving anymore. So it's just being able to go to the gym, all those things. Those are not just small victories. Those are remarkable. Take a city person like myself who hasn't been in the suburbs for a long time, and I've essentially just given up on appearances almost immediately once I get exposed to this level of convenience. So, by the way, that's probably what a lot of people think of when they think about Taleb's book, Anti-Fragile. It's not necessarily that you need a crucible in order to be your best. It's more that you don't necessarily need extreme convenience in order to achieve some sort of outsized potential. Anyway, you order something online, you get, I ordered lemongrass. Again, you order things that you don't necessarily need because shopping and materialism go hand in hand with convenience. And I ordered lemongrass, and it's just unbelievable. You order that with it's so cheap out here in Malaysia. You order it with some lemons, you squeeze the lemons, and you get one of the most interesting drinks that you've ever had. So if you're anywhere in Southeast Asia, I highly recommend that you just start ordering weird vegetables online, where you go down and just start ordering things like red spinach and so on. You could just experiment with that. Ordered the pizza the other night, and I went ahead and, just put some, blanched up, a couple of those vegetables and put it on top of my cheese pizza. So anyway, beyond that, I want to talk about the USA Olympic trials coming out. Interestingly enough, you're looking at a Caitlin Clark effect on marketing, because the NBC, or the network posters for the trials feature David Taylor and two other wrestlers, Helen Maroulis and Adeline Gray. And it's a very odd sort of picture, because you don't have Jordan Burroughs. Now, of course, Jordan lost to Jason Nolf. The incident at the end with the fan harassing him, you have to remember that these people are young, but also it's in Pennsylvania. Remember, the Pittsburgh Steelers fans have always been accused of being rude and aggressive and so on. But in this case, you've got somebody who looks like he's in his 20s just mouthing off. So I don't know what you can do about that. I think, honestly, it's a good thing that I'm hearing impaired, right? It's a good thing that, when you hear somebody like that, especially if you're somebody as high up and as basically a legend in the sport, it's good to just pretend to be, or just imitate being hearing impaired. Because this person is nothing compared to you. Everyone knows that, JB, and one of the jokes was that JB was treated better in Iran by the fans than in the United States. But of course, that's not. The United States has many, many different places. So it doesn't surprise me that Pennsylvania is such a weird place. You've got Fetterman in there as well. Very strange person, especially with respect to foreign policy views and so on and so forth. So the whole state just looks, a little bit odd. And, anyway, beyond that, nobody will ever compare to JB in terms of what he's done for the sport. Maybe Kale Sanderson, wonderful, but didn't have that same impact. Bobby Douglas, amazing, but again, just didn't have that same impact. So no matter what, congratulations. Back to the poster. So I'm rooting for Jakara Winchester and Kennedy Blades, because this whole Caitlin Clark, the white basketball player who is now ubiquitous, she's everywhere. And it's just exhausting because she's got nothing interesting to say every time she speaks, and she's really just a vehicle for other people's marketing schemes. And so one of the reasons I like Jakara is, again, that you're dealing with young people. These people been training their whole lives, extensively. So they don't necessarily have the time to sit down with Hamlet, or whatever, or a foreign policy book when they sit down at the end of a 6-hour or 4-hour training session. But at the same time, Caitlin Clark, just really seems to have a Steph Curry effect, where you just know that because she's being driven by marketing forces, that she's never going to have anything even slightly controversial to say. And so as a result, you compare that with Charles Barkley, who was just wonderful to listen to. And he had a whole team of ghostwriters behind him in the early days when he was famous, more famous, that were actually writing incredible political books, believe it or not. That comes from being authentic. I don't know if it's a Southern, I don't know what that is, but certainly the South in the United States has produced a lot of interesting people relative, especially given the population outside of Texas, like Mississippi and so on and so forth, Oprah Winfrey and Morgan Freeman and so on. So I don't know what's really happening there, but I just want to, despite the fact that I'm in Malaysia and I really don't have access to any of the streaming services, I just want to put it on the record. I'm rooting for Jakara Winchester. I'm rooting for Kennedy Blades, big time. It's got nothing to do with necessarily with the Caitlin Clark effect. You just got to see some young faces. It's just like politics. You just got to see some young faces out there, people you haven't seen before, who are enthusiastic, who are not necessarily driven entirely by marketing forces, and who may in fact have something interesting to say at some point in their lives. Who at least give off that impression, compared to a Steph Curry or to a Caitlin Clark. And one more thing about being in Malaysia, ultimately, the digital wars are upon us, because I can't even click on I can't even access some websites. Forget about video. Some websites are now deciding that any Wi-Fi service in Southeast Asia, right? So you've got communist, quote unquote, Vietnam. You've got, again, Singapore as well as Malaysia, where a lot of these websites have decided to improve, in quotation marks, security simply by blocking access to anybody in this part of the world. So you think about why the United States wants to ban TikTok. You think about all those other things. You think about all the algorithms and the AI that's driving all these different things, or really machine learning. It's out of hand. It's out of control. I tried to actually email a representative in South Carolina, and it just bounces back. Even though I'm using that person's website, again, it blocks you if it sees the Wi-Fi or the 4G connection coming from certain places. Whether or not that's because of social media algorithms, I don't know. But you can see how a lot of the post-World War II framework assumed a single vendor of information, and that was deemed authentic, and that's where we get our history from as well. And if you contradict that, you see how easy it would be for an algorithm that has only one input from one source, the trusted source at the time, to go ahead and eliminate essentially ideological competition. Now, obviously, that's not the case, but I can tell you, being in Malaysia and not being able to even access a website, a business journal website in Iowa, just simply because I'm here, it actually reduces the impact of the United States. So you can have all the Caitlin Clarks you want, you can have even the JBs. What made JB so special is precisely because he was able to be popular overseas as well as domestically. Caitlin Clark, of course, probably not going to have that same kind of impact. But neither Charles Barkley is probably not as well known either. So again, that's the impact of JB. You have somebody, you talk about ping pong diplomacy, you talk about all these things. Sports has always been a way to bring countries together. And I don't think anyone has done more for the sport than JB. Jason North will not do the same thing for the sport as JB. Very talented athlete. Again, he also got caught up in the whole, brouhaha, post-match, just emotions, because he's doing the whole WWF arm flexing thing, he's putting their arms out there like this and so on and so forth. And that's just, you got to have the sense that you're dealing with a legend, right? And who just wrestled his, penultimate match, and maybe just have a little bit more sense. And again, these people, again, I don't expect them to quote Shakespeare, but just have the sense to know who you're dealing with in that moment, and the humility to understand that you're probably not going to ever have an impact on anything, whether you're Charles Barkley, worldwide, as Jordan Burroughs. So coming from Malaysia, I'm going to enjoy my tea and my different, vegetable variations here. But I do miss, really, one of the few things I miss, because everything else is catching up. You can get good pizza now. You can get even good disposable razors. You couldn't get these things about 10 years ago when I was traveling in the area. Things are really changing. And it doesn't look like, we're going to need a Jordan Burroughs if you want the Americans to catch up or to keep up in the area in terms of influence and respect and everything else that comes along with sports diplomacy.